This actually would be good, high quality listening to material for cooking. It's smooth. It's like
Yeah, it's creamy. It's
it's
definitely
like
bad for
Sunday
your
night.
heart.
It's like
So
Sunday night slow jams every Wednesday night.
yeah.
Listen to the smooth
Are
sounds
you
of Dame
are you
David
with your
lighting up the
lover?
cathedral.
Hold her close. Hold it tight,
Bro,
'cause we are
bro, I
in
listen to that
prepared
crap
times.
way too much.
You listen
So,
to slow
um,
jams way too much,
I mean, back in the day,
which was
slow,
a
slow jam, Sunday
Wednesday.
night slow jams was what it was.
Really?
Anywho,
Ugh.
I think we should.
Ugh.
I think we should jump into the topic. Um,
Okay.
so, in this week's one of its bigger news items is the CDC abruptly changing its guidance to say that if you're vaccinated, no more masks. Not inside, not outside. You're good to go. The vaccine is the panacea, and you are completely safe from all things COVID related. That was an interesting bit of guidance, an interesting about face, considering that it wasn't just more than 2 or 3 weeks ago when Dr. Fauci was having a showdown in front of the Senate saying that no, 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 if you're vaccinated, you still need to wear your mask and you still need to socially distance and you still can't go to baseball games and et cetera, et cetera. To which the next logical question would be, and was asked of him many times, well, if I still can't get my life back after I get the jab, why do I need the jab? Which at the time seemed like a reasonable question, but Fauci and the CDC, they bristled at that. They said, well, don't you understand, you stupid rube? There's variants, and the vaccine can't predict all the variants, and you could die from that. Um, and, I mean, people can still get the virus even if they've been vaccinated. It just won't be as bad, but they can still get it. And they had a whole laundry list of the parade of horribles that could still happen to you even with the vaccine. But yet, with no new science, no new research, no new explanation of any kind whatsoever, within a couple weeks, boom, CDC just says, nope, vaccine's the panacea. You get it, you're good to go. Were you as kind of put off by that abrupt change as many of us were, David?
No. Why would I be? I mean,
You trust you trust them implicitly?
yeah, I mean, they never seem to do anything wrong, especially like when it comes to terms of control and what you can and can't do, and whether or not you should or shouldn't do this, or should or shouldn't do that, or can or can't put this in your body of choice. Like, so I feel like what they're doing, if I may take this out onto a limb, um, instead of regulating it and making mandates and telling you absolutely have to get a shot because they know that's illegal. What they're doing is they're telling their hordes, their cohorts, and the followers of their particular parties that if you don't get the shot, you're going to be the reason why we have to lock back down again, right?
Right.
So then it becomes neighbor policing neighbor, and now we have what Gina Carano got canceled for.
Of course. Where you have basically two classes of citizens. You have the responsible, good, holy, they do what all of their betters tell them to do, people who get the vaccine, and the irresponsible people who like freedom or are suspect of the fact that the vaccine manufacturers have exemption from liability. Those people suck. And you have two classes of people, and they're mad at each other instead of mad at their betters who have basically lied to them for the past 14 months. But before we delve any more into that, we have a few comments. So we're going to play those from a young lady. We're going to play all three of them, and then we'll respond based on what she has to say.
Hey
It's a
guys,
lady.
I'm glad to see you guys here. Hey. So you said the CDC lied? What? People died? I know that people have died because they have talked about a few people that have died, but not in the magnitude in which it seems like you know something. You must know some information. Give it up because this is bad. Oh, yeah, that is a big scary thing for me. I got a few friends around me. Oh, I'm fully vaccinated. I'm fine. I can take my mask off. I can get loose. I can fly. I'm like, no, because you still can get the virus and you still can pass it to somebody. Here's the catch. No, you won't die. Now, I could potentially die if I don't take the vaccine, but here's the other thing. You may have the virus, don't even know you have it, just because you've been vaccinated. Little scary. Keep your mask on, thank you. Oh my God, you are so right. No new science, no new research, no new nothing. I know people that are just taking the vaccine just because they want to fly. What? Give me a break. Oh my God, no.
I like her.
I do too. Yeah, she's awesome. And I don't want to. If you chime in again with another comment, please, say your first name because I definitely don't want to mispronounce it and mess it up. But I see the last part of it is Truth Talks, and I got to say that in your three comments, you have lived up to your name because you are talking a lot of truth on those three. Yeah, see, that's kind of our point the whole time. And when we say, with the title, the CDC lied, people died, what we're really referring to is the deaths that are not going to be reported. So basically, the people that have died from COVID up to this point, every single one of them is a tragedy, and everyone we empathize with the families that lost friends and family members, and we're not you know downplaying the virus, the severity of it. We're not downplaying those deaths. We're not downplaying any of that. But what our position has been from the beginning, and what it remains to this day, is that the extra measures that were put in place also caused deaths. These are what the CDC calls deaths of despair. So these are usually self-inflicted. They can come from overdose of substance abuse. They can come from suicide. They can come from increases in domestic violence. When people are forced to stay at home for long periods of time with an abusive spouse. There's a lot of people that have died over the last year, and these are also deaths which could have been avoided. But because of lockdowns, because of mandatory masking, because of now, the overzealous pushing of the vaccine and basically treating people who are suspect of it as second-class citizens, these policies also turn people against each other and also cause mental illness within in some people that are already feel isolated and depressed from the last 14 months, and those deaths count too. Those people matter too. It's not only the people that have died from the virus that matter. And what our position has been from the beginning is there's tons of experts that have disagreed with the CDC and Dr. Fauci, just as or more qualified. Jay Bhattacharya from Stanford University, Sunitra Gupta from Oxford University, Martin Kulldorff from Harvard University. These are world-renowned virologists and epidemiologists who have said from the beginning that what should have happened, instead of locking down the entire society and creating basically 14 months of depression for 320 million people, is you do what's called focus protection. We knew from the beginning that the elderly and the physically infirm that had other comorbidities were at highest risk from the virus. So you protect those groups of people, and then you allow the rest of the people to reach natural herd immunity. This is what happened in Sweden, and its surrounding countries like the UK and Belgium and France that did not do what Sweden did and did lock down had a much worse outcome. Japan, South Korea are two other examples that come to mind where they didn't lock down their entire societies and fared better than other East Asian countries. So this idea that we have to lock down and create all of these excess deaths on top of what were already going to be caused by the coronavirus are worrisome just as much as coronavirus deaths, and they didn't have to happen. These were completely preventable deaths that were caused by irresponsible policies.
Like we were saying the entire time on our podcast, is that it doesn't matter. COVID has a certain death rate. And again, harkening back to what you said before, every person that died from COVID is a tragedy. We are not poo-pooing the fact that they died from COVID. That being said, starvation has a 100% kill rate. And what they were what the American people were forced to do was shut down, lock down. Not you're a non-essential worker. You have to go home and stay home and not go out and not earn a living. Well, how the hell am I supposed to afford this home that I'm sitting in that you forced me to sit in and not go out and work? And I can't afford food now because now I don't have no income. But every 6 months you're going to give me $1,400. I posit to you, Dane, to show me a state where you can live 6 months on $1,400. Any state in the union, bar none. Show me one that you could live on $1,400 for 6 months in between your bailout check. Meanwhile, most of that bailout act went to aid the larger conglomerate corporations and so on and so forth. So that all this for your benefit, for your health, for your safety, it's kind of poo-pooed when we are a social species by nature. And over the past year and a half, you've been forced into your house and away from society. And when you do that, you feel individualized and you start losing your own self when you can't interact with everyone else's selves. Just ask, and then on top of it all, for the lockdowns work, or do they or do they not? The states that locked down the hardest, New York, California, how did that work out for them? They were the darlings of CNN with how they ran their lockdowns. They had the worst migration out of those two states that has ever been seen. And on top of that, they still have the same record number of COVID cases each and every day. And then if that's not good enough for you, let's look at total countries. Canada locked down hardcore when this first came out, and then just not a couple of months ago had to lock down hardcore again. Like, do not leave your home unless you are going to the grocery store, period. You are not allowed to go out and do anything. Despite what all the science says, even though their side preaches the science, they don't adhere to it when it doesn't fit their narrative, which tells me it's more of a control grab rather than a plea for your health and safety.
And we have another comment from our favorite listener of the day, Truth Talk. So I do want to play that, but after that, I do want to share a resource with everybody listening, just to test your knowledge about the lockdowns, the masks, because I think you'll find that the correlation between the measures that were put in place and the effectiveness at actually slowing down cases and deaths and everything we were told that they were supposed to do, you will find that there is no correlation, and that all of those policies, as David mentioned, were power grabs and not aimed at truly helping people or slowing down the virus. But before we get to that, let's play another comment.
You're so funny. I love you already. I met 2 new friends. Okay, no, for real. My name is easy. It's just Divine Idea. Oh my God, you should hear people. They're like, DVDDO. DVI Darida. I'm like, no, divine idea. Every one of us is a divine idea. You know, that's kind of what it is, but nobody can get it right. I'm like, wow, seriously? Anyway, yeah, man, I'm tuned in.
Well, then I'm very glad I asked, because now that you say that and I look at it again, it's obvious that that's what it is. So, shame on me. But, I definitely wanted to give you the respect that you deserve, and obviously pronounce it right. So I'm glad that I do have it right now. And I do love that one part in there that you mentioned, that we are all divine ideas. And I mean, that really kind of speaks to the theme of this episode. It's what a fantastic coincidence is that the point that we just made about every life matters. The lives that were lost to COVID and the lives that were unnecessarily lost to the policies that were put in place to stop COVID. And it's pretty clear, based on all of the charts and the data from the different jurisdictions that had different policies, it's pretty clear that there were a lot of lives that were lost for no good reason at all, meaning they were lost due to the policies, and there was also no slowdown in the virus either. And that's what we mean when we say the CDC lied, the CDC or people died. And so hold on. I want to share that resource that I promised everybody before that comment. So what I would encourage everybody to go do after this show, or you could do it while you're listening to us, is go to the website covidchartsquiz.com. Real simple, covidchartsquiz.com. And what you'll find is some interactive charts where they put up charts without the states, without the dates, and without the numbers, but they'll put up, say, the charts of cases in Florida versus cases in New York for, the summer of 2020. And it says, point here on the chart where lockdowns went into place. Point here on the chart where masks went into place. Point out of these collection of states which state had the strictest lockdowns and which states had no lockdowns. And you'll find after taking that quiz, again, covidchartsquiz.com, you'll find after taking that quiz that there is absolutely zero correlation between states that super locked down and didn't lock down. States that had early mask mandates and late mandates or no mandates at all. States that, had ridiculously high cases and deaths, and states that didn't relative to those policies. You'll find that there is no connection to the policies and the slowdown of the virus whatsoever. But we were told all along the way that according to CDC data, according to the experts, according to Dr. Fauci, these things had to be done to save lives. And that is just not true. People died anyway, and every one of those are sad. But on top of that, a lot of people died as a result of the policies, and those are the deaths that we mourn over. David, go ahead.
Well, like I was saying, if these policies were really enacted for your health, they would have told you lock down, stay inside, but also exercise. Maybe think about changing your diet. Maybe think about getting out in the sun, which vitamin D has been shown to have a very conducive effect to your immune system, which could also aid in fighting off this particular virus, or any virus for that matter. If they were really concerned with your health, they wouldn't have told you just to lock your damn door and stay on the couch and watch TV. They would have told you, okay, try to do something different, try to get healthier, try to work out with whatever minimal equipment you have indoors, use YouTube as a reference. They would have given you a multitude of different things. If anything, the fitness experts and the whole fitness scene should have exploded during this time for like at-home workouts, but that's not what they said. They just said, stay inside, stay indoors, don't come outside. Like that's literally the most unhealthy thing you can do when you're trying to fight off a virus, when you're trying to just make sure that you can make it through this thing. So again, I'm not buying that they did any of this for your own safety. I think they just did it because it was an idea that popped in their head and they needed to get a grasp on it before they spread. And that was the best idea that they could come up with to exert some control over the situation that they had no control over. Back to you, Dane.
And when you mentioned the vitamin D thing, which again we knew from the very beginning, vitamin D is obviously very important for your immune system, period. But we also knew that the UV light from sunlight actually kills the virus on contact, and yet the guidance was stay in your home, stay indoors, presumably away from the sun, less vitamin D, et cetera, et cetera. But the vitamin D also brought up another important point about the vaccine in particular, and this is a massive lie. This lie really did kill a lot of people because they could have gotten help in a more reasonable time before the vaccine existed. If you remember the two big treatments that came out about the middle of 2022, one was hydroxychloroquine and the other one was ivermectin. Now, if you remember, the CDC and Dr. Fauci, they went hardcore at stopping any talk of either one of these drugs having any sort of treatment utility at all. Because hydroxychloroquine was tied to Trump, right? They used that to really badger and say, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. Well, guess what we find out after the vaccines come out? To this day, the vaccines that hundreds of millions of Americans have been injected with, is not FDA approved. It has what's called emergency use authorization. And emergency use authorization is basically a step below full approval. If you have full FDA approval, you have to go through a rigorous, testing process, and all kinds of variables have to be accounted for before the FDA gives its stamp of approval. If you get emergency use authorization, though, you don't have to go through all those steps. But there's one key point to emergency use authorization that matters for purposes of other treatments like hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. You cannot get, according to FDA rules, you cannot get emergency use authorization if there are other viable treatments which could treat whatever disease the vaccine is aimed at. So if hydroxychloroquine actually did help people that were infected with COVID, or ivermectin actually did help people that were infected with COVID, then on that one criteria alone, the vaccines would not get emergency use authorization. They would have to go through the full approval process, which, as Fauci testified in front of Congress, would take about 7 to 10 years. Now you have to ask yourself, in light of that, and in light of the billions of dollars that the manufacturers are making from these vaccines, where they didn't have to jump through all those hoops and they could get them on the market in a matter of months as opposed to years, you have to question their motives, straight from the CDC, from the World Health Organization, and Fauci all the way down, why they attacked hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin so strongly. And only since the vaccines have come out under emergency use authorization and started being used, have they stepped back and kind of retreated and said, yeah, on second thought, hydroxychloroquine maybe is, a good treatment for somebody. We're talking, they've been hospitalized, they're having a hard time breathing. Basically how HCQ works is it stops the virus from actually entering into your cells and replicating, which is the dangerous part, because once it replicates and you have a substantial enough viral load, that's when you start being unable to breathe, et cetera, et cetera. So without getting too technical, now after the vaccines are out, they say, yeah, those probably did help. Now think of all of the people in mid-2020, before a vaccine was on the market, who were getting put into hospitals, put on ventilators, and dying. Think of how many people, how many lives could have been saved if they were given a treatment of hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin or any of these other alternative treatments, and I mean alternative to the vaccine. How many of those lives could have been saved? Those are direct coronavirus lives. That is blood directly on the hands of every expert like the CDC, Fauci, and all the way down the line that stopped those treatments in their tracks because those treatments being viable posed a threat to their emergency use authorization from the FDA for their vaccine. That is a direct, clear, and concrete lie, and who knows how many people died because of that guidance by the quote-unquote experts.
Like we've spoken candidly, and just not to harp on this point, but this is my main point that I have with this whole situation, is that they always say that it's for your safety, for your health, for your this, for your that. It's for the betterment of the American people. For the past couple of decades, heart disease has been the biggest killer in this country. Cancer also being the second runner-up every year for the past couple of decades. So that being said, if this was truly for your health, they wouldn't allow you to intake products that are causing cancer or causing heart disease if they were really, really concerned with your health. This was to kind of hearken to put a dot right on your nose there, Dane. It was a complete financial decision to say hydroxychloroquine was a non-viable method. Anytime you ever heard about it, it was poo-pooed. It was because Trump said it. It's absolutely not viable, not usable. We can't even look at it that way, so on and so forth. My point being is that it all comes down to finances. Like we are a financial benefit to those that lead us. Like it doesn't behoove them to fix heart disease. Why? Because you would have to fix the entire structure of everything. You'd have to You'd have to hold people accountable for what they put into their mouths. You'd have to hold the sources that they get their food from. You'd have to hold a myriad of different things that that have been incorporated into the system that is our daily life. Like, and then not to get off too far on a tangent, but whenever you hear it's for your health or for your safety, just kind of hearkening back to what we always say on the podcast, it's whatever the act says that it's doing, just assume that it's going the complete opposite way. Like the Patriot Act, it's the most unpatriotic document that's ever been forged by any American government, as far as I'm concerned. The CARES Act, like we have a whole episode called "The CARES Act Could Care Less," because the whole CARES Act, it gave you a $1,400 check to buy your silence while it pays off huge dividends to a bunch of different corporate conglomerates. So whenever you think that the government is helping you out and is protecting you, that is when you need to be the most aware. That should be the first red flag. When they say, we're doing this for your health, you should just go ahead and assume, like, you, and if you're not a conspiracy theorist, delve into it. If they say it's for your health, prove us wrong. Go in and find the verbatim doctrine that is for your health that proves that it's doing all the stuff for your health. But usually these are like long form documents that you have to scroll through 400 pages of information to get through, and they're counting on you not reading it. And they're counting on you not reading it because it's not really for your health. All those other 399 pages are tax cuts and benefits for people that are getting hurt, or for whatever corporate interest has a financial benefit within this given situation. So with all that being said, I hand it back to you, Dane.
So we have a few comments from Divine Idea, and I want to play those first, but I want to, you've mentioned the podcast a couple times, and we haven't said exactly what that is. So this is our one live show of the week, and we do every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, and we go till about 8 p.m. But we have a regular full podcast that releases every Monday, and that is called Weapons of Meme Destruction. You can find it on any podcast catcher, YouTube, just Google Weapons of Meme Destruction, and you'll be able to find us. But we have a website, WMDpodcast.com. We encourage you to go to that website, sign up for the email list, and stay in constant contact with us. Pitch us show ideas, and just join the crew. But with that being said, I want to get to a couple comments from Divine Idea. So let's start from the top.
That is a crime against humanity. I'm appalled. I can't believe it. And I can't believe the mentality of different countries, peoples. That just messed up that last message. The people of these different countries, such as ourselves, who are just saying, okay, here's my arm, shoot me. Wow, right? Do you think this has anything to do with the agenda of Agenda 2030 or Agenda 21? I mean, could this have been something that was designed to cull the herd? I don't know. Everyone says conspiracy, and then everybody starts looking to the left like, oh boy. You know what I mean? No.
I do want to play the last two, but I want to put a pin in that Agenda 21 because I do want to answer that question directly. But before that, I want to get to your last two comments, Divine. So last two.
Oh my God, the Patriot Act. Don't get me started on that mess. Ugh. Anyway, are you guys on Clubhouse? Because you should be.
Before the last comment, we're not on Clubhouse. I've heard, and definitely correct me if I'm wrong, because we haven't really looked into it. I've heard Clubhouse is like an invite-only kind of thing. If I'm wrong, please tell me that and let me know how we get on there. If it's as simple as downloading an app like Stereo was, definitely that's something we'll look into jumping over there. But I just don't know enough about that. So feel free to educate us on it. So last one before we get back to the Agenda 21 comment, because I do think there's an interesting little thing there.
I can tell you this. From the onset of the pandemic in March, I started vitamin C, zinc, and D3. And that was at the advice of a doctor. An actual doctor said to do those things. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And I did it. And when I did experience one symptom of COVID, which I think made me possibly have had it, was the loss of taste and smell. That's all I got. And within 3 days, with some spiritual work as well, I was fine. I did not die and did not turn into a respiratory situation.
I mean, we are very, very happy to hear not only that if in the off chance that you did have it, that it was as mild for you as it was, but that first of all, you had what sounds like a very good primary doctor who actually cared about your well-being instead of trying to sell drugs to pump to you, because exactly what that doctor told you to do is what some of these other experts, that I mentioned earlier from Stanford, Harvard, Oxford, etc., we've known this about corona since day one, that vitamin D is very good for you. Zinc, that's one of the big components of the hydroxychloroquine treatment, is you give people high levels of zinc because that basically blocks the virus from entering into the cell. And then the HCQ basically backs that up and, kind of emboldens the cell to resist the virus. So the fact that your doctor put you on those things, and then obviously vitamin C for the overall strength of your immune system. I mean, God bless your doctor and you for if you did get it, having it as mild as it was. Go ahead, David.
But again, harkening back to, this is all for your safety. This is all for your well-being. This is all for this, that, and the other. Why wouldn't the government, if they were concerned with keeping the American people healthy and away from this virus, why wouldn't they come out and say that? Like, if you're concerned about this, go out and get this. If you're concerned about, these are small little steps you can take to protect yourself while we're trying to find out a way to get you a vaccine so that you can get to a relative safe point with what we know right now.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
go ahead.
I was just gonna completely back you up and say, like, yes, the CDC and Fauci could have said from day one exactly what Divine Ideas doctor said to her. And everybody needs to get their zinc, their vitamin D, their vitamin C, etc.
I can already hear their defenses, like, well, we didn't want to come out and think that and make people think that that these were plausible cures for it when we didn't have science to back us up. But at the same time, if you're willing to accept that notion, then also backtrack and rewind back to the point where Fauci came out and said that you do not need masks to keep yourself safe from this virus. So when he lied to you, and then he admitted later that he lied because he wanted to keep masks for the essential workers, the essential health workers, and didn't want to have a crisis of not having them protected, he put you all at danger. So they're more than willing to put you at danger with falsified information. Why couldn't they at least give you the modicum of, like, we don't have all the answers, but if you want to feel a little bit safer, here's how to bolster your immune system, which is backed by a lot of science over the years that has existed since we've been alive, at least. Like, there's a lot of nutritional evidence that supports to say that all those things that were mentioned support your immune system. There's a lot of scientific backing for that. So all they needed to do was come out and say that, and I'm sure people would have rushed out in droves and bought it, and they would have hoarded it like they hoarded toilet paper, like the assholes they are, and done all that stuff. But all I'm saying is that if they were really concerned with your health, they would have made that public knowledge. But they didn't. And they chose not to.
And here's the thing about the concern for your health when we take just those three things into account that Divine Ideas doctor told her to get on. Vitamin C's, D, and zinc, right? When you get the flu, what do they put you on? A Z-Pack. Why is it called a Z-Pack? Because it has a bunch of zinc. Why zinc? Because
Azithromycin.
we've known forever that zinc, helps bolster the cell wall to viral entrance. That would it cause the virus to spread within your system, et cetera, et cetera. Vitamin D, we've known forever that that's good for your system. Vitamin C, we've known forever that's good for your immune system. The fact that UV light also killed coronavirus in particular on contact, the fact that why hand washing was such a big deal is that we knew that soap basically exploded the virus from within on contact. All of these other things were just extra benefits, icing on the cake, that we had no right to expect that coronavirus was that weak to these very simple daily measures that somebody could do to combat it. And yet, despite the fact that these measures aren't super costly, so everybody can have them, and despite the fact that these were simple measures that could have been introduced from day one that would have made the ultimate use of ventilators not necessary, which after a bunch of people died on ventilators, then the experts came back out and said, on second thought, maybe the ventilators are hurting more than they're helping. And, all along down the line, they never just came out on day one and said, okay, here's what we know about general respiratory viruses, and here's what we know about coronavirus in general. If you have high levels of zinc, vitamin C, and vitamin D in your system, that's generally going to be a good thing. It's not going to hurt you unless you go overboard and, take too much of anything, can become toxic. But unless you go overboard, if you have high levels of these three things in your system, you stand a pretty good chance. They never said that. They never said that. If anything, it was on the 14th paragraph on the third page of an article. It definitely didn't have a title like they had of X number of people die. If you're not wearing a mask, you're killing grandma. Like, those were the headlines we got, not the simple, health maintenance measures that Divine Idea got from her doctor. And that's the whole part of the problem. It's not just overt lying. It's also by withholding information.
The biggest vitamin D provider in the world is the sun. Go out, stand in the sun, run around your block a couple of times. Like, go out and be a human for once. Like, go out and enjoy life in nature, which is something that never happened in normal human society as we knew it from the time that we've been, we've grown up and evolved from where we were at. So it was a time that we could have connected more with nature. We could have got out, we could have seen more of what life has to offer in terms of like just the natural beauty of everyday that every day brings. But that's not what they said. They said, Katie, bar your door, don't even talk to your neighbor, maybe get your mail once a week. Like, if that's not fear mongering, and if they shouldn't be held accountable for that, I don't know what is, and I don't know what you should be held accountable for anymore. We've smashed past acceptable unintelligence in this, and we've smashed into a doctrine of absolute control because they were afraid of something. And then, by the way, not to poo-poo any deaths any time, but we got lucky with this one. All the other plagues, the Spanish flu of 1812, Dan?
1917.
Spanish flu, what was the I'm conflating dates. I'm not a historian, you're the historian. Anyway, like smallpox decimated one-third of Europe's population.
Well, that was the Black Plague, but
well, it is also known as smallpox, wasn't it?
No, the bubonic plague is different than smallpox.
Smallpox.
Okay, let's not rehash the technicals. Just finish your point, because we have another comment we got to play.
It's a gigantic thing. But anyway, so we get measles vaccinations, we get smallpox vaccinations, we get black plague vaccinations, just to fucking encompass that all. Because every time you encounter these diseases, they have a very high mortality rate. This mortality rate was small. Like, it was small. It was even smaller. And not to poo-poo the deaths that happened, but it was smaller than the average pneumonia. So why are we making this thing such a big deal? They were projecting, if we're lucky, 1 million deaths within the first 6 months, if I remember correctly. And worst case scenario, 2 million deaths when it hits our shores. Meanwhile, they had no idea it had already hit our shores. So these people that vastly overestimated how grand this thing was going to be are also still holding on to those ideals, even though the numbers don't back it up. They're still trying to convince you that they do. So,
right, and
the power grab.
And just on in terms of how wrong they are, because I do see we have a couple of new listeners in here that may not have caught it earlier. I highly encourage you to go to the website covidchartsquiz.com. And again, it's real simple. It's a bunch of interactive charts with the state names and the dates and everything removed. And it says, pin the Thanksgiving on the chart, because we were told, right, people are going to get together for Thanksgiving and it's going to be mass death everywhere. And so it takes all the dates out and it says, where do you think, based on this chart, it shows way up and way down, where do you think Thanksgiving is? And so you would think, based on what we were told, well, Thanksgiving is right before it spiked, and then we had all the spikes just like they told us. And the reason why it's called covidchartsquiz.com is because you'll find after taking this quiz that you failed. And we all failed. Because again, if you're answering the questions based on the data, you're going to get it wrong every time. When did the mask mandate go into place in this jurisdiction? You won't know. You can't tell from the raw data. And so that just kind of demonstrates how there was no correlation between the policies that were put in place and the slowing down or stopping of the virus. And that's kind of the overarching point we're making in here is all of the experts, all of the guidance that we got from CDC and Fauci was wrong time and time and time again. And it was wrong because they overtly lied in some contexts, and in other contexts because they simply withheld information. In either case, more people died than had to, and the only thing we got from it was a larger, more intrusive government. But we have a couple comments from Divine Idea that I want to play, and then we do have to get to her Agenda 21 question because we promised that, and here we are 15 minutes later, and we're still not there.
Can I caveat onto that?
You get first say after her two comments. Okay, go.
All I was going to say is if you think we're lying, both of those have lied to you. Because the CDC came out and said that asymptomatic can't spread, and then they retracted it the day after it. And then Fauci said the mask thing, and they came out 3 months later and said masks totally could have helped you. So those are just the two. If you need one flaw to not believe it at all, that's all we need. Go ahead.
All right, couple comments.
No, it is, and I have some invites. You want to come? You want to come? Because we could do a jamming show over there, man. I'm telling you, and there's a whole community of people over there just like us.
I would love to. I know I speak for David when I say he would love to too. We would gladly accept any invite, and you pick the topic, and we would be happy to have a conversation with you.
Don't you speak for me. Anything named after the thing that we were talking about is atrocious to me. Go ahead.
So yes, we should definitely link up over there. But last comment from Divine Idea, and then we'll get to her question about Agenda 21 and some other stuff like that.
That's how we control people. Fear, shame, guilt. Those three things alone, if I can keep them fearful, if I can keep them feeling guilty, if I can keep them feeling shameful. And there's one more. Fear, guilt, and grief. If they can, those four things, fear, guilt, shame, and grief, if I can keep the public feeling that way, I can control them. I can make them do anything I want them to do. And that's what we need to fight against. You know?
That is, again, speaking true to your name, that is an absolutely divine idea, and that is a theme that comes up on our podcast and on these live shows a lot. Is that those four things that you just mentioned are basically tools in the toolbox of the powerful that seek to turn us against each other. They try to divide us along lines of gender, socioeconomic class, race, ethnicity, nationality, religion. They try to divide us in every single way they can. Be afraid of that other person. Be envious of that other person. That other person's greedy. That other person's selfish. That other person, pick your poison, right? And that's what they've done all throughout COVID is they've turned us on each other. And it's been in the point that we're making in this episode, and in particular to COVID, is they did it and all along the way said, oh, we're doing this because it's the prudent thing to do for the policy to stop the cases and stop the deaths. But again, if you go to that website, covidchartsquiz.com, you will see, based on their own data, all of those charts are created with CDC data. None of the policies actually slowed down the cases. None of the policies reduced the number of deaths. There is zero correlation between when a policy went into effect and the number of cases. Sometimes the policies went into effect, like lockdowns or mask mandates, and the cases skyrocketed. So the exact opposite of what they said would happen. So we didn't save lives the whole time, but what we got was hatred for our fellow man, our neighbor, who we have much more in common with than we do any politician in DC. And that's exactly what they wanted, because when, like you said, when they have us fearful and guilty and, everything you said, and grieving, exactly, then we're not looking at it as the problem. Exactly. It was their playbook.
It's a playbook.
So, David, your point on that, and then we're on to Agenda 21.
They ran the playbook exceptionally well. They knew it from what we do to other countries, so they implemented it on ourselves. They went to anger, they went to death, they went to fear, they went to grief, and that's how they're trying to get you to comply right now. Talk to and they're not forcing it. Joe Biden will come out there and say, if you want the vaccine, it's there. If you don't, okay, but
no, that's not. No,
hold on.
That's the exact opposite of what he said.
Hold on. But at the same time, he holds you morally accountable, and then he'll use the 600,000. Well, you might not want it in your arm, but think about the 600,000 that have died from this disease. It's an appeal to your emotion to get you to remove yourself from your logic. And your neighbors will do it too. They'll come out and they'll say that you don't, like we had a conversation last week, that your neighbor has a Trump sign in their lawn or a Biden sign, pick your side, it doesn't even matter. There's a lot of Americans say, I can't even talk to them. There's nothing to be gained from that conversation. Like, no, you should talk to them because that's your microcosm. We should be protecting each other. Again, to listen to Joe Biden or to listen to CNN or to listen to Fox News, that's your macrocosm. None of those guys give a fuck about whether or not your tulips bloom this year. Like, your neighbors do. Your neighbors know you. That's who is most important to you right now. Your neighbors, your city, your county, your state, your nation. That's how that shit goes. That's how this thing should go. We are all one community. We're all one United States, and it starts with your next door neighbor. You need to trust them, and if they make a decision for their own well-being, good. And if you follow the science, like the left has been saying this entire time, you have nothing to fear from them. If they get COVID and die, that is a tragedy too. However, they chose to not get the vaccine. Vice versa, you should not enforce your will upon them and enforce your morality upon them because you think it's the right thing to do and they're not doing what you think is the right thing to do. That is not your moral high ground. That is not your place. Anyway, Dane,
So, comment from a new listener before, and again, we've been putting off Divine Ideas Agenda 21 thing
Right.
for what feels like an eternity now. So, no matter what this comment says, we will get to it if there's a question there. But we owe her a discussion on that from several minutes ago. So, the comment first.
You know what? I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. There could be some dark entities that was feeling the pressure from that whole Epstein connection thing, pulled the ace hand, released a virus, and I think there are really good people trying to now resolve the issue, but they were overstepped by private companies that said, oh, this is a perfect time to make money off of it. So it's like a mixture of both. I think the people pulled this allegedly to divert our attention. No one's talking about Epstein anymore, and they also profit on it on the side. But I hope there's other, like years from now, you're going to see other vaccines that are safer that are going to come out. But I don't know. We'll see what's going on.
Well, I'm glad for that comment because it actually does dovetail with Divine Ideas question from earlier about whether this ties in with Agenda 21 and all that kind of stuff. And I think it does. I think that powerful people, primarily sitting in government, very rarely miss an opportunity to grow their power. And then when there's no longer a need for that extra power that they took, it's like pulling teeth to get them to give it up. And usually it never does. There's a very important book on this called Crisis and Leviathan. It was written by Robert Higgs. And in there, he talks about the ratchet effect of the powerful and particularly government. And if you're even remotely handy and you've ever dealt with a ratchet before in your life, you know that the whole purpose of a ratchet is it only goes in one direction, right? It tightens and it may click back so that you can tighten some more, but it doesn't loosen, right? You have to obviously turn it the other way to get to loosen. But the point is that the collection of power within the state only goes in one direction. Every time there's a crisis, they say, we need more power. We have to do this. We have to declare people non-essential, and we have to shut down businesses, and we have to lock healthy people in their homes instead of only the sick. We have to do these things for the public good. And then once that scary crisis is gone, they don't exactly rush back and say, all of this power we took, we don't need it anymore. Here, you can have it back where the power truly lies with the people. We're going to keep some of it for ourselves. And that's how, over the course of the 20th century, you have the government grow to the size and scope and intervention into our daily lives that it has. And so I would encourage anybody to look into that book because it's very important on that concept. It's called Crisis and Leviathan, written by Robert Higgs. And on that last question, tied in with Divine Ideas question about Agenda 21, yes?
And if I could just parlay that right into our conversation from earlier, the only thing that will make Jeffrey Epstein go away is when we let them go away. They're counting on us to forget it. Don't forget it. Every time you put in a new thing in Facebook every week or so ago and just say, the stock market rose or dropped this much today, and oh, by the way, Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. Like, there's Jeffrey Epstein's still in the news with, Bill Gates being left by his wife, supposedly because of his nefarious deeds that happened on Jeffrey Epstein's island. It's all like, so they want to talk about that now, but I view that as a tertiary issue to the actual fact that Jeffrey Epstein existed, Jeffrey Epstein did what he did, and Jeffrey Epstein was pretty much executed in front of all of our eyes in cold blood, and they're selling us that he killed himself. So all that being said,
the Epstein is still getting a far field from the Agenda 21 thing, which
just don't forget it. Keep going.
If I know I saw the headlines, and I don't know, definitely chime in, listeners, if you did as well. The World Economic Forum has been talking about this for years, and they call it the Great Reset. Now, they want to use these crisis-type events. The next big one they want to use is climate change. And the reason why it's called the Great Reset is they just don't want to tinker around the edges of society. They want to completely turn society upside down and want to basically control every single one of your life daily decisions. So here's just one example, right? So Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, about a month and a half ago, uh, admitted to the press that, yeah, they're looking at rules to put a gas tax on people based on mileage. So not just a tax at the pump, but if you drive more than somebody else, they want to tax you. Now that seems innocent enough, I guess, on the surface, right? Until you realize that that dovetails perfectly with Agenda 21 and the World Economic Forum's Great Reset to say we want to completely discourage and disincentivize people's freedom of movement because it's based on fossil fuels. And we want to basically take the decision out of their hands of how they travel. Or here's another example. It's actually in the text of the Green New Deal that we need to move from raising livestock for meat products, steaks, hamburgers, and things like that. And we need to move into quote unquote sustainable protein production, which includes turning hamburgers or creating hamburgers out of bugs. So I don't know about you, but I'm not going to go out of my way to completely upend my diet because Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or I forget the name of the guy that heads the World Economic Forum, because they say that it's good for the environment, right? I'm not going to do that. But they don't want that to be left up to me. They don't want it to be left up to you. They want to get down into the granular day-to-day decisions that you make, including what you put on your plate and put in your car to control you from top to bottom. And that is exactly what Agenda 21 and the Great Reset is all about. It's all about using crisis, this impending doom of a future cataclysmic event, which may or may not happen. They're going to tell you with certainty it is. But that future fear is what they want to use to justify taking away your agency, basically, as a human being to do what fulfills you and makes you happy in life. Definitely chime in on that divine idea if you had anything extra on Agenda 21. But yeah, I think that we are at a serious risk of that as a society, because once we start to say that the government can forcefully inject people, and we're not there yet, there's fighting going on about whether or not we're going to allow that. But once we allow them to say you're sticking this in your arm whether you like it or not, and if you don't get as many freedoms as people who do, that is a crossing of the Rubicon moment that we're only going to be able to shoot our way out of. So, David, thoughts? We do have a comment from Divine Idea on that.
Yeah, I figured she might be chiming in if she's still listening. No, I mean, every generation has always thought that they are going to be the generation that sees the end of the world. Well, it hasn't happened yet, but what I will say is that I can guarantee you that we always say this phrase on our podcast, and it's been harkened over many other podcasts over the course of a couple of years, but it's hard times make hard men make easy times make soft men, and soft men make hard times. Now, we have had a lot of soft men, as we've discussed in our podcast a couple of times again, that are taking as much as they can for no other reason that they can, and leaving very little for the rest of us. So if that's part of their plan for the 2021 agenda, then they've done a great job, because it doesn't seem like we are on the same team anymore. But they are trying to make it seem like they're on our team, but the real people that are our enemies are our neighbors, harkening back to what I was saying about the Trump signs. So anyway, just stay focused, stay on target, and always believe that the guy telling you that he's not your enemy, vet him first, and then move on to the people that he says are actually your enemy. And then we can take the next comment.
Right, and just for the new listeners, because we are winding down the show, and before we get to these comments, just want to let you know that this is our one time a week live show we do every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, and we go till about 8 p.m., so we're a little over now. But we have a regular podcast that releases every Monday. You can catch on any podcast catcher. You can find it at YouTube. It's called Weapons of Meme Destruction. Just Google that. You'll find us on every platform. Or check us out at our website, which is WMDpodcast.com. We have, what do we have, David? 42, 43 episodes. So you can listen
Just
to an
recorded
entire catalog.
42, and we're going to have 43 this week.
Yeah, so definitely stay in contact with us. Jump in the comment sections wherever you find us, because we love to hear from the listeners like we have on this episode tonight, and we like to engage with you guys. So with that being said, let's engage with a couple more comments before we wrap up.
I think his name is Klaus Schwab.
Nailed it. Yep.
Head of the Economic Forum. Klaus Schwab.
Thank you very much for that. You are exactly right. That's the guy's name I couldn't remember. So thank you very much.
Oh my God. They have been working on Agenda 21 for over 29 years now. And this agenda with the UN is serious. And they've done it all under our noses, under the radar. And eventually they're going to have to start enacting some of this agenda. And the public is just stupid about it. You know, they just don't want to. I don't get it. It's like, wake up before it's too late. And you look around and what you thought was a cage becomes a prison.
Yeah, and there, she just came in with a third comment, and we do want to play that, but I did want to, kind of comment on that last part that she was talking about, that, it's just now getting to that kind of watershed moment where it's time to start implementing it. And one doesn't need to have a tinfoil hat, be a conspiracy theorist, like they always accuse everybody of being, to say that, oh, well, they created coronavirus in a lab and turned it loose on us so that they could get this control. Now, if that is the truth, would it look any different than what actually happened? I posit to you, no. But let's say that it wasn't that insidious, and let's say it was just a naturally occurring thing, and whatever happened. But even if it wasn't intentionally done, look at what their reaction once it was turned loose. The reaction was, as we've said throughout this episode, not to give simple health advice, let people take care of their own health, make their own life decisions. It was more and more power to me being the government, right? And so in terms of what she was talking about there, of it's time to implement it now, whether or not it was created in a lab and released on us or came from nature, the point is this served as a perfect fertile soil for them to start setting in motion their plans of saying, well, how malleable are the people really these days? Are they malleable enough for us to lock them in their houses? Yeah? Okay. Are they malleable enough for us to make them wear a piece of cloth in their face for 14 months? Are they malleable enough for us to, basically turn them on each other, to shame each other into, getting a vaccine injected into them? Are they malleable enough to, if we want to, start vaccine passports and essentially force vaccine on people who have all kinds of objections to it? And again, one of the primary ones is the fact that all the manufacturers have exemptions from liability for civil suit, granted to them by who? The government. So if that's not a reasonable objection to getting the vaccine, I don't know what is. But every single step of the way, every single policy is, what can we get them to do? Can we get them to cross this line? Can we get them to cross that line? And again, I posit. I was just gonna finish with this. I posit to you that once you start to say that people sitting in DC can dictate what you get injected into your body or not, that is a line that once crossed, they are going to see as a green light to do whatever else they want to do.
But again, you saw when those people stormed the Capitol, they didn't have the strong back to stand up against them. They were all shuttled into a fucking safe room. They all huddled into their masses, protected from the people that they govern, that came in there because they were furious about how they were governed by them. So, and then also the constituents that are supposed to be representing those people also took shelter too. So it wasn't just, they were just coming for the left, they were coming for the left and the right. So when they huddled into their little masses to get away from these people, who do you really think has the power then? Because they don't have the power. They're not strong-willed. They don't have a spine. They can't stand up to somebody that challenges them. So what are they positing?
And when you say they, you're speaking of like politicians in general, right?
Correct. Capitol Hill,
right.
All the people
Yeah.
that are telling you to stay home, stay safe, and to get your injections, who are they really putting in charge of it? They're putting in charge your neighbor. Your neighbor has to watch you and tell you to get the vaccine. And if you don't, it's their job to shame you, to push you into getting said vaccine. It's not, they don't have to police you when you're already policing yourselves. When all they have to do is come out and say the narrative 5 times on national news and all the other syndicates to get you to comply with whatever ideology that you adhere to. Because now, like we've said before, it's the cathedral. It's not Democrat and Republican. It's the cathedral of
it's the powerful versus
democracy.
all of us.
It's the cathedral of the republic. Like it's you might as well make the sign of the cross when you walk into either one of those echo chambers that they seem to be involved in. All I'm saying is but those are the ones that draw the lines in between each one of us that cause the divide. But really the only divide is between us and them. Like you said, the powerful versus the ones that gave them the power. But the power is derived from us. If we stand up and say we aren't going under lockdown again, I don't care what mandate you put out. Watch how quickly they cower. Watch how quickly. Well, that's not what we meant. We meant just be safe when you go out there. It's like it's whenever you have a Joe Blow moral high ground walking, pull your mask up, pull your mask up, pull your mask up, and then you're like, I'm outside. Why should I pull my mask up? Well, pull your mask, and then you threaten them with violence, and then all of a sudden they shudder and run away. They wanted that control over you, but when they couldn't stand up to you, they shunned and run away. You see how quickly their argument fails. I'm not eliciting violence. I'm not calling for acts of violence upon people. All I'm saying is don't let the ones up top that are dividing us tell you how you should treat your neighbor, who is really the one who will be protecting you long run. Go ahead, Dane.
Right, and to your point that you were just making about, they basically turn us into the police of each other so that they don't have to do it. They outsource their authoritarianism to our neighbors. I'm reminded of a quote now. With historical quotes, sometimes like, oh, well, that person didn't really say that or whatever. So I'll tell you who it's generally attributed to, and it makes perfect sense why it was attributed to her. But even if she didn't say it, the quote is filled with a bunch of wisdom that, was important for times like these. The quote is attributed to Harriet Tubman, and she allegedly said that, I freed hundreds of slaves, but I could have freed hundreds more if they only knew that they were in chains. And, again, did she say that or did she not? I don't know. But the key takeaway there is that nobody is more hopelessly enslaved than the one who doesn't even realize it. And if people are going down the street yelling at each other for not wearing a mask or shaming each other into getting the vaccine, and, like David was saying, basically taking the outsourcing of the tyranny from the politicians and imposing it on their neighbor themselves, those are the people that are in the same chains you and I are. The ones that ask questions and say, well, maybe that doesn't make sense, or maybe I should dig a little deeper, or maybe this politician or this big corporation or et cetera, doesn't have my best interest in mind. And that in exchange for that skepticism, we're looked at as selfish, irresponsible, misanthropes. We're the cancer of society, right? They're basically turning our neighbors against us. Freedom is being proposed to the general population from the powerful as selfishness. They're trying to equate in people's mind that if you make an objection based on the principle of freedom, then you're selfish. You're a bad person. You are to be viewed with skepticism inherently because you think freedom is an important ideal. that's dangerous, because it's the ones who argued for freedom all throughout history in all kinds of contexts. Those are the ones who actually ended up achieving it, and that was always a small minority, but they were aggressive in their pursuit of freedom, and we stand on their shoulders today. But as David was saying about the weak times hard times make weak men, or I'm totally messing that up, but we're at the stage in the cycle.
Hard times make
Yes.
hard men make easy times make soft men make hard times. There we go.
Yes. The point is we are in the point of the cycle where it's
we can break it.
The weak men's
the cycle.
The weak men have made hard times. We're going into hard times. And it's going to take some fortitude and a stiff spine to be able to stand up to your neighbor calling you the bane of existence, and to actually seek out freedom wherever you can find it.
It goes back to the yin and yang of life. It's when you want peace, prepare for war. Like, the only thing that keeps peace is the fact that war is on the horizon. If you're ready for it, people don't usually want to create war with you. But if you're not ready for it, if you're weak-willed and you can't stand it, then your peace is only an idea. And it can be infringed upon whenever somebody else so chooses. So study up, get healthy, guys. Protect yourselves, protect your neck, work out, make yourself better, read some books, I don't know, educate yourself, and just become more than what you were. Use this time. You should have used this time of lockdown as a time for personal growth. But if you didn't, take that as a learning opportunity and then apply the rest of your life as an opportunity for growth. You're always supposed to be growing, because if you don't, you stagnate. And when you're stagnant, you're an easy target, period. Dane, you want to get that last comment in?
Well, with that being said, yep, let's let Divine Idea close out the show.
Sure.
Yes, if you're on Instagram, I'm on Instagram. Go there, let me know it's you from this show, and I will tell you how I can invite you to Clubhouse. Yeah, because you deserve to be there. You guys are great.
Well, thank you, Divine Idea. You're the sweetest member that we've ever had, by the way.
Well, we've had some nice commenters here and there on different shows, but definitely we will. Yeah, we will definitely connect.
She is real nice. Go ahead.
I will connect with you, Divine, by both our podcast page, which again is Weapons of Meme Destruction, but also from my personal page. I'll reach out to you to let you know that we're in contact because of the show, and hopefully we can link up over there. And like I said, if you have a show going on over there and you pick the topic and you'd like to invite us in for the conversation, we'd be humbled yet happy to accept. So thank you very much for your input on this discussion. You've been an asset, probably more than David. And come on, David. Come on. You just gonna let me get away with that?
No, I'm gonna let you marinate in that one. I'm gonna let you think about what you said. I'm gonna let you feel real bad about it.
I kind of do, because you didn't say anything. If you would have got mad at me after saying it,
Exactly.
But we have another comment, and then we'll close out the show.
Oh my God, I can only imagine, with your stance and your take on this, I can only imagine how many people have came out of the woodwork to shank you right here on stereo. In these stereo streets, it gets pretty dangerous when you sit there with a right mind. So you just keep up the good work. Oh, David, that's my dad's name. David. You guys are great! I love this show, and I enjoyed every minute of it. And tell all my friends, next time you come on, make sure you tell everybody when it is. We're going to be here. I'm going to see if I can get some friends. I'm going to come in here, and we're going to light it up.
Oh, that is awesome. Yes, every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, and we will be more than happy to engage with you and as many friends as you can bring along. And we'll definitely hook up on Instagram before then. And so, I definitely encourage you or your friends to pick our topic for next week. That would be awesome. So thanks for dropping by tonight, and I'm definitely going to follow you back and drop into some of your shows here and there. Thanks for joining us.
Got it.
And everybody else that was on, thank you, and we will see you next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Over and out.
All right. Everybody be safe.